Well, friends, hello and welcome. We're really at the end of the year here, and we're going to do something different today. This is going to be a very special episode of Coach's Corner. For those of you who have been following my podcast, you know that over the years I've changed the focus of the podcast. I've been looking to do sort of more real-time stuff, and it really was a genesis that happened for me back in 2020. My buddy who's with me here today, I'm going to introduce him in a moment, was here in the studio with me, and we were talking about the shutdowns that were going to happen, the lockdowns in California. And we were both kind of like, what happened? You know, we didn't know what to do at that moment. It was kind of strange. And what ended up happening in the weeks that followed was that my clients started to call me. And I've always been known as a guy who's like, I kind of know what's going to happen right down the road, around the corner. I kind of know what the next step is. And they started to call me. And they were asking, Rob, what do we do? What do we do? How do we survive? What do we need to change? What do we need to do? So I decided that, okay, I need to find out these answers. And my buddy here, he sort of pointed me in the right direction to say, hey, there's more to the stories than is being reported in the mainstream media, the narrative, if you will. And that led me down the rabbit hole, which is kind of the entrance to the rabbit hole, if you will. I started to dig and dig and dig, and I started to find a lot of answers for my clients. And what I was doing early on back in 2020, sort of around April or so, I started to do a video a week for them. And I call it my update, my weekly update. And what I was doing is giving them the frame of what was happening. There's been so much that's happened over the past 2 years. We want to start out today, and we want to give you sort of an overview of the last 2 years. What are the things that have happened? What are the reactions to those things that have happened? And I'm going back 2 years. Now, you might say, Rob, 2021, that's enough. It's enough turmoil for 1 year, right? But I think in my mind, and you could be different, you could think differently about it, but in my mind, 2020 and 2021, you could group them together, right? Because really, it was a lot of the same thing that happened. And it might have been more intense in 2021. It might have been different for you. But the elements of those 2 years, I think it just makes sense to combine those two. Let's go back to the beginning of what we're going to call the event, right? And we'll look at the event and look at all the things that have changed. And I had clients who asked me, it's like, Rob, when is it going to go back to 2019? When are we going to be? And it's like 6 months into this, I told them it's not going back. It's too far now. Once you go to a certain point, people don't even remember what it was like in 2019. I talked to clients today. Hey, do you remember what it was like in 2019? No, I don't. It's very different today, right? Things have changed so much that their attitudes are different, their approach to business is different, their customers are reacting differently. And we're going to cover a lot of that. We're going to go over it. This is going to be a longer podcast. And podcasts are usually short, like 15 minutes or so. This one's going to be a lot longer, and it's going to go a lot deeper. And I was thinking about doing this, and I was on a mastermind call. My friend here who's with me today kind of called me out and said, you have so much information, so much knowledge, that what I was going to do for my annual December 30th event didn't make sense this year, that we should do something a little bit different. So he was a catalyst to creating this, what you're watching right here, right now. And a lot went into it, weeks and weeks and weeks of planning and going back and forth and having phone calls and, shared notes and all the rest of it. And to kind of come up with strategies, solutions, ideas, things you can put into play to help you thrive when we're getting into this new year, 2022. I keep saying 2021 is the new year. I don't know why. It's like the year just went away, But no, we're going to 2022 and trying to keep it all in your mind and kind of keep it all straight and figure out what to do. There was somebody who gave me a great analogy. It's like being in the middle of the ocean in a rowboat. Right? And the waves are coming. You don't know where they're coming. But you're trying to survive, and the waves just keep coming and coming and coming. And that's, describes the situation for a lot of people. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there too who are oblivious, not paying attention to any of it. And they're just going business as usual. Well, it's hard to be business as usual in this frame. And what happened for me was when I started to get those calls from my clients, I realized, can't do business as usual. Things have changed too dramatically. So this is about that change. This is about lessons that we've learned. And the last part we're going to talk about are the solutions, the ideas, the strategies, the tactics that you can use going forward. Now, my special guest, I've been hiding him, right? If you've been watching if you looked at the title, you already know it's Mitch Axelrod, right? And I had the opportunity to choose from 20, 30, 40 different people I could have invited here. A lot of people emailed me and said, Rob, I'd love to be on your show. I'd love to be on your show. But I really thought about Mitch and I said, you know what? Mitch is the one. And here's why Mitch is the one. Mitch is not the person who will look at the headlines and just accept them. He digs behind them. He wants to find out the reasons why. Just like me, I got to find out the reason why. I know that all news, all media today is headline news, right? Remember CNN used to have that headline news show and it used to be just the headlines and they would go on? It's really not that different today. You know, you think about any story that they're going to tell, they're going to try to tell a national, international story and the segment's 3 minutes. I can't even tell you my experience of going to Starbucks this morning in 3 minutes. How am I going to tell you an international story in 3 minutes, right? No matter how good I choose my words. So we're never getting the full story. And Mitch is one of those, and he and I talk a lot about that and going behind the scenes and digging a little bit deeper. We want to know the energies that are behind it. That gives us the opportunity to kind of see ahead, right? A lot of people are just kind of reacting to what's going on. We're trying to stay a step or two ahead of it and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen next. And we're going to bring that to you today in our own way, our own special way. And Mitch has got a lot of experience, a lot of value to bring. I'm so excited to have you here, Mitch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Robert, thank you. It's really a delight to be with everybody. And, I really feel honored. I'm kind of like a foil. I'm good at helping stimulate conversation. And what's really ironic is you refer back to that day in March last year, and we were together. We were sitting right over there having a conversation. We were going to shoot a video, and we both kind of came to the same conclusion that something's going on here. We don't know what it is, but we got to find out. And so I went back home and I wrote an article. I didn't publish it, about what I felt was happening. And for me, it was a strange twist of events because 12 days later, as you know, I had a stroke. And we'll be talking a little bit about what I experienced and how I was able to get through this time in a very unusual experience. By the way, I followed that stroke with 2 brain surgeries in 5 days. So my life got turned upside down. And I learned a lot. I like to come to everything in life with a beginner's mind because there's always something to learn. And even in the dire times and the adversity and the setbacks and life-threatening situations, there's always gold in their hills. I've been called the Pied Piper of my family because I'm always looking for the silver lining. So I had a very unusual experience. You can tell by my speech. I got paralyzed. I lost my speech. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move my arm. So I had a whole different experience than a lot of people. But I think over the past 2 years, I think it's fair to say that we've all been traumatized to some degree. And part of what I want to talk about is hope, optimism, possibility, a little light in the world of darkness, because all you need is a sliver of light. And if you keep going to the light, you can kind of move away from the darkness. And so I am really thrilled to be here. We have lots of good stuff to share with you. And we are going to get to talk a little bit about work and business and how you can attract customers in times like these, and some strategies and tactics as well. So let's just do.
We have a lot. Yeah, we have a lot to share today, and we're so grateful that you're here and joining us. We're streaming on, I think, 9 different platforms right now live, and we're going to be on another 30 different platforms with the podcast later, so we're going to get big distribution. We're not just in the United States, we're overseas as well, so welcome our overseas viewers. I hope you're understanding our English. We'll try not to use our New York accents. We're both from New York. We'll try to be a little smoother with the way we speak. I want to get started today, Mitch, let's go back to that, March 2020. You and I were in the studio, and that was, I think, the day of or the day before Newsom signed the agreement, the mandate here in California, basically saying with the stroke of a pen, lock your business up before midnight tonight and don't come back until we tell you. Now, I got to say I was shocked, right? That was shocking. I had no fear about the bug, no fear about getting sick, no fear about any of that stuff. But that one really set me off in a way. It was like, wow, we really serve as business owners. We really serve because they allow us to serve, right? So they can come along and just sign an executive order like that and say, no, you can't open your business anymore unless you're one of the chosen businesses. Your Costco, your Home Depot, or your food store, or that kind of thing. You could stay open. Otherwise, not so much. That was scary.
It was unprecedented. I've been in business for 40 plus years, and I've lived through all kinds of ups and downs, cycles, real estate booms and busts, stock market crashes, 20% interest rates, bankruptcy personally, but I never lived through what we've lived through in the past 2 years. It's really unprecedented. And when something like that happens, because there's no playbook, there's nothing to fall back on, you wonder, how do I respond? How do I react? All right. It's very much, I feel fortunate in a way. It might sound crazy, but I think my stroke happened at the right time. Like if it was going to happen, it happened at the right time because it really gave me a chance to step back and look at the whole world and say, all right, there are certain things I cannot control. And how do I deal with the things I cannot control? Do I let myself get frustrated? Do I let myself get angry? Do I let myself get stressed? And how could you not? And so I think the gift, my friend Dave said to me, he said, you've got a new book title, My Stroke of Luck, because my stroke actually discovered my brain aneurysm, and it would have burst, I would have been dead, right? So that was very lucky. But then I also thought, well, it was lucky from the point of view that I got a chance to really go inside and say, what matters to me? What's important? What gives me meaning? And because I had 3 hours of rehab every day, occupational therapy, physical therapy, I had to learn how to speak again. I was focused on the present. And I think that this whole experience makes the future so uncertain and so hazy and so out of our control that in a way the gift of that is to bring us present and say, okay, what is today? How am I going to live as fully as I can live today? Not worry, not complain about what I can't do, what I don't have. So it really was a gift in a way, aside from probably saving my life. In another way, it kind of gave me a rebirth, a chance to go inside, see what's important to me, and see what do I want to do with my time. The grains keep falling through the hourglass, and we don't know when that last grain is going to drop. And the day before my stroke, I was healthy, vibrant, and the day after my stroke, I was a whole different person. And so I think that there are lessons in everything, and that's what we're trying to pull out is the nectar of the lessons, not dwell on the difficulty, and then look to the future with some optimism, say what's within our circle of control, our circle of influence, and focus on that, and somehow be able to deal with the world, but not let the world so much influence us. And that's been a journey for me. It's been work, but it's been worth it.
Yeah, and it has been, no question. One of the things I was telling my clients back in March of 2020, April of 2020, was try not to disrupt your daily habits too much. It's like try to do the same thing. You get up at 7 o'clock every day, keep getting up at 7 o'clock, although you may not have any place to go. Do everything you can to keep things as normal as possible because that normalcy gives us certainty. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have the certainty, then we're really thrown. And that was helpful for me. I really did that. I really just maintained, the pattern. I actually didn't stop working, although I didn't come into the studio. I had computers at home and I was getting up at the same time and doing the same hours every day, keeping things as normal as I possibly could, because you're right. When things start to go off the rails like that, uncertainty creeps in. And then what happens is people will retract and they pull back from, and they don't know what to do anymore. And it gets worse when you start doing that.
Yeah, and I had really I had a time on my hands. Um, I went from the hospital to a nursing home, and I was in the nursing home right at the beginning of the lockdown, and boy, was that a crazy experience. And I spent 9 weeks there, and it gave me perspective because no matter how bad you think you have it, there's always somebody worse off. And in the nursing home, the wheelchairs, people in the wheelchairs lined up outside the room. It was like parking lot of wheelchairs. And I was the only one after 4 weeks. I got out of my wheelchair, I started walking. And I felt like as I walked down the hall, the level of empathy and compassion, it just welled up inside of me because I thought, here I am, I'm walking, I'm starting to talk again. And these people, some of them they just sit there like zombies. Other people were sad because we couldn't have any guests. Nobody could come see you, talk to you, hug you, hold your hand. So dealing with all the physical rehab, there was the mental. And the mental was, I think, what got me through, was what the strength I got from the mental to realize, all right, I'm going to keep my eyes forward on my task, what I have to do. I'm not going to let this sadness or disappointment or compassion hold me back. But it gave me a sense of no matter how bad you think you have it, I was healthy, except I had a stroke and I was paralyzed, but I was healthy. And I thought, wow, some of these people are not going to get out of here. And so I have this thing I just brought it with me. It's on my refrigerator. All right, I don't know if anybody could see this. It's a compassion exercise. And when I wake up in the morning, I go to drink my lemon water, and I pass the refrigerator, and this is the first thing I see. And what it reminds me to do, it reminds me to be compassionate with myself. That was probably the biggest lesson I had to learn, is to be patient with myself, to accept my situation, not be a victim, not complain. And then it says, just like me, this person, be compassionate to others. Just like me, this person is seeking happiness in his or her life. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering in his or her life. Just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking to fulfill his or her needs. And just like me, this person is learning about life. And that's what I wake up to every morning. And that gives me a sense of, all right, no matter what's happening to someone else, you can always find compassion, and to be compassionate to yourself. And I think that may be the word for me. Everybody talks about what's your word, but that is certainly one of the most important words in my vocabulary. So I think,
and honestly, it's missing from society now more than anything. I mean, we are being divided by so many different things. It's not just politics anymore, politics and religion, which is what always divided us in the past. But now it's just like one thing after another, and it's hard. People are like, well, you're not on my team, so I can't talk to you anymore. And people unfriend you on social, and you get hurt by that. And it's like on and on. It just doesn't seem to end.
What's interesting about that is sometimes we do work, we create things, and we don't know we're creating them for ourselves, right? So back in 1999, I was writing a book called Success Abilities, 21 Life Skills for the 21st Century. And I went into my high school in my town and met with them, and I said, I'd like to present this. And they said, let's do a TV show. And I said, great. So we did a TV show, went on cable all throughout the area. And as I was rehabbing from the stroke, I realized that I had to fall back on these success abilities, because the first thing was acceptability. I had to accept my situation. This is it, not the new normal. This is it, right? This is what is now, except the next, responsibility. And that's the big one. So what is responsibility? Well, am I responsible for my stroke? Well, who knows, right? But I'm responsible for my response to it. Responsibility. So in between stimulus and response exists all of life. When you really think about it, think of that. Everything in life is a stimulus. In between your response is a gap. In that gap, you have the ability to choose your response. If you react from the past, chances are you're going to react with fight, flight, or freeze. If you control that gap, that simple gap, you really can respond to anything in life. And that's what I had to really, really, really work on is my responsibility. Third thing, adaptability, right? There was a study once done that said, what is the single characteristic that is common with people that live to age 100? And they couldn't come up with anything. They couldn't say any one thing, but they said the number one thing of all of them was adaptability, flexibility, the willingness to be adaptable to your, like a tree blows in the wind, it doesn't stay rigid. So you have to be adaptable. And when you don't know, I've never had a stroke before. I didn't know how to adapt to it. We've never been in this kind of situation before where somebody could tell you, close your business and you can't go in and you can't feed your family. And so a lot of the things that I realized I had taught, I had to go back and rely on and actually get through the whole process.
What were you talking about with your clients? If we go back to 2020, what kind of things were you sharing with them? Because I'm sure you were getting the calls I was getting, and people panicked and freaked out. And what do you mean I can't run my business? I can't feed my family? It was scary times.
Well, sure. For self-employed people, people run businesses. Many businesses run on thin margins. And they have to be open every day in the accumulation of a month to make ends meet. I was very fortunate in that I'm in a business that could be remote, but think of all the people that serve us who had to be there live. And so when you look at it, the first thing I thought of, which, that's my nature because I go to like, what's wrong here? I thought, well, all these government employees that are getting paid and all the authorities who are telling us to shut our businesses, they shouldn't be paid either. Why should they be paid out of our tax money and while they tell us to close our and I thought, that's not fair. That's un-American. All right.
Well, that brings us more division, right? That was another thing that they did. And they said, well, we're going to pick and choose the businesses that can stay open.
Right.
Right.
They say $1 trillion of wealth, maybe more, were shifted upward. Mm-hmm. So, Amazon and Costco and all the big businesses stayed open.
They took out the little guys.
And from what I gather, and nobody really has full statistics, but like 2 million businesses went under.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 20 million small businesses in America. 2 million of them went out of business. That's 10%.
Never to come back.
Never to come back. So how do those people adapt? They say, "Oh, learn to code." Huh. You look around and you say, "Where are the opportunities?" Well, I think more and more people are going to say, "You know what? I am going to go out on my own. I'm going to have a side business. I'm going to make sure that I have some control over my income so that if by some chance the things that are out of my control happen, I'm not left in the lurch." And boy, if this doesn't really speak to having multiple streams of income, where if one is cut off, you can rely on something else. So I think it's been a convergence of a lot of what's happened over the last 20, 30 years. And it's going to take a lot of intestinal fortitude, mental strength, and physical acumen to get through this. And so that's why we're here. We're here to kind of give you some hope and optimism and real life strategies as well.
I've always believed, that no matter what, it's the entrepreneurial crowd that pulls us out of all these things. We are the ones who innovate, and you saw that very clearly when everything was being shut down, how the entrepreneurs were still bubbling to the top. Zoom became a big thing, and we replaced in-person schooling, in-person learning. We replaced live events. We replaced so much of it with the technology that we have. It's always the entrepreneurial crowd that will find the answers. When government puts these regulations on, I just look at them as obstacles. They're just more obstacles. Okay, so we've got this obstacle. What do I still have available that hasn't been shut down yet? And I was advising my clients, in that direction and saying, okay, so the business you were doing and the way you were doing it doesn't work right now. There's too many obstacles in the way. You're not allowed to do it. So let's go look for what does work, what can work, and had a lot of businesses shift their focus and shift the way they were delivering products and services.
Well, that's the nature of the entrepreneur. I remember when you said to me the French derivative of entrepreneur was undertaker, right?
Yep.
I thought, undertaker, really? But anybody who undertakes an endeavor is an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And the number one reason why people get into business for themselves is freedom. Freedom to direct and control their life, freedom to do what they think they want to do. So inherent in, certainly America, the ethos of freedom, and that's what drives me. I mean, my number one value is freedom of thought, freedom of bodily movement, freedom to go where I want, when I want. Nobody to tell me, you go stand in that corner, take your lunch at 12 o'clock. That's my nature. And when I feel like my freedom is starting to be infringed upon, that's worth fighting for. Because once you lose, the first thing they do, they try to take your mind. Now, we know, about mind control. But I think people are less observant of the subtle things that go on every day. So when you're backed into fear, you get to a point where it's easy to control how you think, what you think. And once you lose the capacity to think for yourself, then they go after your body. Because the reality is, if they want to break your spirit, and I say they, and this could be anybody, could be your next door neighbor, could be a family, could be a business competitor. In this sense, it's a larger they. They always go first for your mind, because they know if they can control your mind, then they can control your body and maybe control your spirit. And I feel there's an undercurrent. I really do feel there's a spiritual battle here, that there are people, they're purposely dividing us in tribal ways. And when we're reduced to that fear, we tend to be tribal. And so what's happening is we're descending into tribalism. And I don't mean we're out there beating each other up. I mean tribal from the point of view of, are you on my team or are you on the other team? All right. And everything is black and white. And so we're descending into that as opposed to rising into humanism. And the phrase that I quoted about 20 years ago that's been haunting me ever since, and I see it playing out, and that is, insanity and vanity are slowly destroying our humanity. Insanity and vanity. You look at things that are happening now, you can't say that they're sane. Vanity, people who make mistakes can't admit their mistakes, can't go back on it, can't adjust. And in the process, we're losing our humanity. And that's what frightens me the most of everything that's happening. So I'm out to save humanity from vanity and insanity.
I hear you. Yeah. One thing that I learned from my mentor, Tony Robbins, way back when, that served me so well over the years, is that anytime you're faced with something that's very complex, and the things we're facing right now are extremely complex, one of the things you need to do is you need to run them through the common sense filter, right? So you look at this piece and this piece and this piece, and you go, well, this doesn't make sense. Things don't add up, right? That's the kind of phrase we've been using for many years. Like, this doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. Well, if it doesn't add up, then one of two things are happening. You're being lied to, or number two, you don't have enough information to know how they're linked together. And that's what's been driving me, really, to look deeper into the issues, to really see, okay, they're telling me this is what I'm hearing over here. And then somebody might be telling me this over here, and these two don't align at all. So their truth, maybe there's a little bit here, there's a little bit there. That means I've got to do a little bit of work. I got to dig and find out. And believe me, it's not easy to do that. I mean, you have so many different sources of information coming at you. It's difficult to figure out what's true and what's not true. And the average person is not going to figure it out. Forget it. We spend way too much time, trying to decipher all of this stuff. But always run it through the common sense filter. You have common sense. We can be discerning creatures. We don't exercise that muscle very much. We're not very discerning sometimes. We just accept what is and move on rather than asking questions. And I've been asking a lot of questions over the past few years and getting answers that sometimes I don't want to hear. But at least I'm aware enough to know that, this isn't what I want it to be. Okay, What's left? What else can I do? How can I get around it? How can I work through it? How can I deal with it as it comes to fruition? So that's a tool that, if you've never thought of it that way, Tony Robbins used to have a flip chart on one side of the stage. And he would be explaining something, psychology, whatever, and they'd run over to the side and he said, now we're in the common sense corner. And he would write down what the common sense was. This makes sense, this makes sense. I was like, oh yeah, okay. That's a powerful tool that is so useful for guiding us through the crazy that we're living through these days.
And I think we definitely need tools, without a doubt. One thing that comes up for me in this whole experience is like how fear can take hold of you, right? And when you get to a point where you're afraid of something, you can't see it, can't feel it, but you know it's there. It's as real as if you were jumping off a cliff somewhere. And when people are in fear, it's very hard to have a conversation because the conversation is dominated by that belief. They talk about fear versus love, if you're coming from fear or love. And that reminds me of a very important quote that I've been using quite a bit for about 15 years. There was a guy named Robert Oxton Bolt. He was a screenwriter. He wrote Lawrence of Arabia. What else? Dr. Zhivago. He had 2 Academy Awards, but he was a great wordsmith, and I'm big on words. Belief. He talked about belief. So get this. This is a very powerful quote. Belief is not merely an idea the mind possesses. Belief is an idea that possesses the mind. Let me repeat that because when I heard this quote, it totally changed my life. Belief is not merely an idea the mind possesses. Belief is an idea that possesses the mind. Carl Jung said, men don't have ideas, ideas have men, or people, if you will. So when I got to thinking about that, I did a coaching session on something I called bursting the belief bubble. And I thought about it and I said, well, what do we do when we have a belief that we believe so strongly that it possesses us? In other words, if you can't laugh at it, challenge it, question it, if you can't have other people criticize it, shine it in the light of truth or whatever, then the belief possesses you, right? And what do you do when you have a belief that possesses you? We tend to defend and protect it. So even when new information comes, we don't accept the new information if it challenges or goes against what we believe. Now, I'm not saying all beliefs are bad. It's not a question of good, bad. It's who owns the belief? Or do you own it or does it own you? All right? And when a belief owns you, you can actually take that. There's an old story of the guy driving on the right side of the road. And here comes a Mack truck. He's on the wrong side of the road. But this guy is driving. He said, I'm not going to move. He's in the wrong. And he wound up being right. He wound up being dead right. So what I discovered in this whole process, being right is often not that important. Because if you defend and protect something that's not loving and serving you. So I have a filter, and this is gold. It's also good for business. Why would you hold a belief that doesn't love and serve you? Or love and serve the people you love and serve? If you have a destructive belief, if you have a self-destructive belief, if you have hate, anger, whatever, and you start to realize that belief, that you holding on to that, it's like drinking poison and hoping somebody else dies, right? So my son said to me once, Dad, you're one of the only people I know who doesn't really hold a grudge. I said, yeah, because that's like drinking poison and hoping somebody else dies. I said, you dwell on it. The other person's not thinking. So why do that? So that quote really blew my mind. And now you can say, all right, if there's new evidence, if there's new input, is that belief serving me, loving me? No. Then why do I hold on to it? Right? So that was a powerful distinction, and I offer that to everybody I work with, to say, look at those beliefs that possess you, and if they're healthy, and they're loving and serving you, or loving and serving the people you love and serve, great. But if they're not, then you owe it to yourself to let go, or change it, modify it. Because sometimes you can hold on to your beliefs so tightly that they literally strangle you, and they prevent you from seeing the possibilities in the world. So that was a really profound quote that I heard from him.
You're seeing a lot of that going on right now as people are hanging on to these beliefs. They're being fed whatever they're being fed, whatever information they're being fed, and they don't have the time, the energy, the effort to dig beyond the headlines and find out more. And the belief with them, they start to hold it, it becomes part of their identity, and then they defend it to the death, literally. And it becomes what we call a conviction. It gets to that level where it's an unquestioned belief. It's part of them. They own it now. And that's really difficult. You can't have these conversations with someone if they're over here and you're over here, and you each have convictions. It's like it's only going to result in an argument. There's no pathway in. There's nothing you can do at that point. And we're seeing that a lot, and it's breaking families apart, and clients are giving up on some business owners. Oh, I don't believe what you believe. You're on the other side of this argument. I'm not doing business with you anymore, right? And we're seeing that in retail stores. People don't go to some retail stores because of the way they're reacting to the situations. Like, no, I don't believe you're overreacting. You're doing too much or too little or whatnot. And people are walking away from it. It's very divisive right now, and you're right. Compassion is the pathway out of this. Moving forward.
I've been in business. I'm in my 44th year. I know I don't look old enough, but
you look 18. Come on.
I've always said that the key to business, I think, again, just opinion, is if you can sit in somebody else's seat, walk in their shoes, and see through their eyes, right? So I try to put myself in other people. Now, let's face it, I'm human too, and I'm prone to all the human emotions like everybody else. The thing is that when you get control of your mind and your emotions, you no longer let them rule you and move you and direct you. It's the same thing with emotion like belief. Is the emotion, are you controlling the emotion, or is the emotion controlling you? And so it's hard to have a conversation if one of the two parties in the conversation is unwilling to switch seats. By the way, I call this the new game of negotiation. Because really, if you look at negotiation, the old game, I call it, of negotiation was, obviously, I'll shoot high, you shoot low, and then somehow we compromise and meet in the middle. But the new game thinking is, no, let's maximize. Let's see what's the highest and best for both parties, and let's shoot for it. Now, how do you get there? Well, you have to switch seats. If you're willing to sit in my seat and advocate for me, what's best for me, and I'm willing to sit in your seat and advocate for what's best for you, when we get back into our own seats, we have a much better chance of getting to that highest and best than if we're haggling over getting our way, so to speak. And that changes the context of the conversation. So I believe that it's very easy to neutralize the difficulties between parties if you say, you know what, I'm going to sit in your seat. I want to see the world through your eyes. I want to somehow get inside your head. And I may not agree, or it may be 180 degrees opposite of how I believe or think, but I want to honor you. I don't see that happening today. I see people getting more entrenched in their own seat.
Yes, absolutely.
And rather than walking to the middle ground and making the first gesture, they wait and they wait and they wait to see if that's an ally. Are you a member? So we've
are you part of our group? Or not,
we've reduced our conversation.
We've become tribal.
That's it.
We've really become tribal.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is that as we elevate our interactions, our relationships, our conversation above ideology, and get to real practical, common sense solutions, and then ultimately to a level of humanity, then it's at that point that we'll transcend the differences and realize that at heart we're all human. We're all human. And that's really, I think, a big part of my work going forward is to try to bridge that divide, to find a way for people to be willing to hear an opposing point of view, accept it. You don't have to live it, but acknowledge it.
Don't agree with me.
Yeah, it's okay. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we
We
can
need to
go
see more
out
of that.
and have dinner,
Yeah.
have a beer, be social,
Yeah.
and so it'd be nice to see us evolve.
You know,
back
one
to
of the
that.
guys on our mastermind, John, he knows I'm on one side and he's on the other side, and he's like, you're polar opposite from me. And he reached out and he said, you know what? I'd love to have beer with you, or I'd love to, get on a Zoom call and have a chat and understand your point of view. And I said, great, that'd be great. I'd love to understand your point of view as well. And I think that's how we grow. And if we don't do that, that's where the problems are, when you don't try to understand the other side of it. It's not that you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. It's like we try to make everything black and white, and we forget that there's a whole spectrum of millions and millions of colors in between. And every time we try to make it black or white, we're missing out. We simplify it too much, and then there's a lot more richness to life than just that.
Well, on that subject, if you look at black and white, it can only be. But when you elevate the conversation, it's like a kaleidoscope of color, and from my vantage point, I'm not so interested in being right. As a matter of fact, I said the first thing I had to do after my stroke was heal my body and hold my mind. The second thing I did was I dived deep into the ocean, all right, because I want to know what's going on. I had time on my hands. And what I realized is that people can get righteous about a point of view, all right? And then if anything that challenges that point of view, it starts to challenge their identity. So if your identity and your point of view, your belief are too closely aligned, like who you are is not what you do, is not what you think. They're all three parts of you. There's the thinking, the mind, what you do, your body, and then there's the spirit, which is the unique you. All right, I call it soul, role, and goal. And when you start to realize that, well, in the arena of goal, everything is it's goal or no goal. And so if you just elevate that conversation to beyond black and white, either or, now you start to realize there's a world of possibilities. And so one of the big challenges I think people have is when they descend into that thinking, it's either this way or that way, they lose the possibility that could be both ways. It could be and. So if you're in an or frame, you're going to pick one side or the other. If you're in an and frame, you can find commonality. You can say, okay, what do we agree on? Let's start with what we agree on. Well, we're all human, right? We're challenged with the very same things that other people, and start from a higher level of conversation so that when we get down to ideology, which is black and white, you can say, okay, I can respect your ideology. I could still love you. I could still serve you. I'm not going to obey that ideology, but I'm going to love you and serve you. And so that's kind of how I look at the world. I guess it's because I'm the youngest of 8 kids, yours, mine, and ours. I was always the peacemaker. But I think making peace is a very noble gesture these days.
Yeah, and you're looking at so much of the stuff that's going on, and people do take sides, and they get entrenched. And I think, we have these leaders, these thought leaders in our society, and often the media end up being the thought leaders, and they're not giving you the full picture. They're giving you the headlines, and people are grabbing onto those headlines and go, yeah, that makes sense to me. And they'll just grip onto it without digging beyond it to find out the rest of the story. Who's a guy who used to do that, the rest of the story? Here's the rest of the story. His name's on the tip of my tongue.
Somebody will ping us.
I will.
Here's kind of an analogy, I think, what's happening now, and why it's kind of frightening in a way. And at the same time, when people are willing to dive a little deeper, they see things that they don't see on the surface. And I observe, and it's not a criticism, it's observation. I'm an observer. I try not to criticize. I criticize myself enough. I observe that the world we're swimming on the surface of life. And in 2019, let's face it, that was one of the best years in America, probably worldwide, but certainly here. Wages were up, income was up, things were going well. And then all of a sudden, down below the surface, as you dove down, which I did, you realize that there are dark forces down there that are affecting what's happening on the surface. But you don't realize it if you're swimming on the surface, because until it bubbles up, it doesn't affect the surface. It stays deep below. Well, what I found as I went down, not too deep, is that there were people controlling certain forces that were dictating whether or not we could do certain things. And they didn't necessarily have our best interest at heart. And I didn't want to get into a long conversation with people about it, because when you're swimming on the surface, if I'm coming up from deep, I can't come up too fast. I get the bends, right? And if I appear out of nowhere and I grab you and I take you down, like that shark, the movie, you're going to panic and you're going to flail. You have to go down little by little. Now, I'm a deep diver. That's just my nature. When I hook onto something that I'm interested in, or I find curious or fascinating or counter to my instinct, I want to know what's going on. So I dive in and go as deep as I can until my ears pop, and they come back up and they go back down. And so when you're down there, you realize that there are things that you can't say to the people on the surface, because they're not either ready to hear it, don't want to hear it. And what right do I have to impose my views on somebody who is not open to hearing them?
You get to the point where you have to wait for them to ask. And when they ask, like I started asking and you started sharing stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know that existed. And I found a whole new world of, looking for news and looking for information that, is not on the surface, is not something you would see unless you're a seeker, unless you go look for it.
Well, and I like answers, but I'm bigger on questions, right? Because the questions, life is in the questions. Once you have the answer, you kind of wrap it up and you put it away and you think you got the answer and you move on. I'm always questioning. I'm even questioning the answers, right? And so what I started to realize is that the answers I was getting back, I really didn't like. And so it took me a long time to process, and I realized, my goodness, I can't just dump all this stuff on people. I have to respect their space, respect their place in life, and so I turned my attention to helping people to see how it pertained to their own life, what decisions they make. And when you think about it, as I mentioned before, stimulus, response. All of life is really in controlling that decision gap. And if you're in fear, you're going to react. And when you react, you're not like a truck has come down the road and jump out of the way. You react, you freeze, all right? That happens. You flight, meaning you go away. Or what else? You fight. So one of those three things. So when you look around, you see people fighting with their family members, fighting in physical spaces, fighting on the street, And I say, what's causing that? Tremendous fear. Fear, they don't know how to direct it. Rather than direct it to conversation, investigation, finding out, talking to people, they direct it in an unhealthy way. And that's something I think I've seen way too much of. That disturbs me, that people would feel it's okay to attack somebody. It's okay to go into a store and rob the store. In fact, there was an article about how many major chains are closing stores like crazy.
Yep.
Because they can't handle the looting, the destruction.
Well, yeah, they can't lose that much inventory. They're paying for that inventory, and just because it gets stolen doesn't mean...
Yeah, it doesn't get paid for. So
it.
It's almost as if there's a sort of civilization breakdown, and that's got to really stop. And the way it stops is, I think, having people do things like what we're doing, talking about it, talking with each other about it, finding what's common, agreeing to disagree, all right, and somehow getting support. One of the biggest things, the success abilities, if you will, supportability. When you're locked in and confined to your home, and I live alone, so I went through this whole process pretty by myself. you start to get crazy with your thoughts. And so it's very important to be supportable. And many of us are great. I'm great at being supportive. Not so great at being supportable. So I had to learn to rely on my therapist, my doctors, my nurses, my aides. All right, I had to realize that, okay, this is my team now. I'm going to let them help me get well, get healed. I think right now, all of us would do well to seek out people that can support you, not agree with you, but support you and help you get through this. The worst thing that you could do is go through this alone, and it's showing in the stress and the depression and everything showing
Well,
up.
people are really struggling with the isolation. Like, I was talking to family members, and you could see it on their faces how much they struggle with it.
I remember nobody could come visit in the nursing home, but one woman had her son, an older son. She was about 65, 70. Every morning he was outside her window because when I walked, I could eventually walk around the place. And every morning I would see him outside, and he was the only visitor. And that place had about 80 beds, right? So there were like 79 people, including myself, that didn't have a single visitor for the length of their stay. Now, it's hard enough to get well, to heal in that kind of condition. But when you don't have support, when you don't have people to visit, to talk to hug you, to hold you, just to sit with you, you can get really lonely really fast. And I think
and then your mind takes over.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's why you got to control this thing up here. You got to.
Because it'll run wild on you.
And I saw that. I saw that with people. And then when I got out, I saw how it had already infected, I call it the mind virus. You get an infection in your mind, and all of a sudden you're thinking crazy thoughts. But you couldn't help it because everybody's so isolated. So I guess it's time to really reach out. If you haven't reached out already, reach out to people that want to support you. I'm one of them. I love to support people. And I'll always talk to family, friends, neighbors, whomever. Sometimes you just got to listen. Everybody, we're in a talking age. Everybody wants to talk. Not too many people want to listen. I think you could really change a person's life if you just sit down and listen empathically.
So we have some gifts for you guys. Wanted to share that with you because, Mitch and I have prepared some stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to continue our conversation here, talking a little bit of social media and some of the things that we've learned a lot over the past 2 years, and what can we do going forward. So we've got a lot coming for you. But tell them about what you have to offer. I'm going to put the link up here so people will know where to go. They can go collect their gifts. There it is, crushit22.com/gifts.
Yeah, mine is kind of a business-oriented gift, although it's useful for anybody. I'm giving away essentially a special report called the Ultimate Profit Model on how you can turn profit in your business. And I recorded about a 19-minute video. In fact, I remember recording that video right here. And that's basically how to attract, qualify, convert customers, what I call the new game of selling, and then how to keep, multiply, and reactivate your customers. I call that the new game of service. So if you go there, and then you can fill out an intake form, and I'll look at the intake form, and I'll actually give you a complimentary second opinion on your business. So if you go to the link that Robert gives you, you can download all that stuff and watch the goodies at the site there.
Fantastic. That's a great gift. I'm offering a free 44-minute strategy session for business owners who are looking to really figure out what to do, with all the changes that we're facing and all the dynamics that are going to be shifting going forward. I was listening to some feeds this morning and hearing some of the things that we're going to be faced with come January, and it makes your head spin sometimes. If you're looking for help with that, if you're looking for help with your marketing, if you're looking for help with, trying to figure out, your best strategies, where should you put put your energy? Where should you put your money as far as advertising goes? We can talk about it during our free 44-minute strategy session. There's no charge for it. Obviously, it's free. And I'd be grateful to have an opportunity to chat with you about your business and help you out. So just go to crushit22.com/gifts, and you'll be able to find that information there. Just sign up, put your email in, and then follow through, and you'll get on the page, and then you can actually schedule your session with me. Now, here's the thing. I've only got room for 25. So once we get to 25, I have to cut it off because obviously I can't spend all that time on the phone. So 25 is the number. And when we get to 25 people, I'll have to cut it off. But crushit22.com/gifts. And we'll look forward to meeting with you via Zoom. It'll be fun. Really love doing that. Okay. Let's go into the next phase here. I want to talk a little bit about, we talked a lot about people being in different tribes, and there's a lot of division. And, I've been unfriended several times on Facebook. People don't believe what I believe, and so on and so forth. And my rule on social is I don't unfriend anyone because I disagree with them. Why would I do that, right? I only would unfriend somebody if they personally attack. That's over the line for me. And I think we need to learn to do that. It's just because we disagree with somebody, we may be able to learn something from them. I'm not saying you will, but there's an opportunity there that you leave that door open. So I'll post things on Facebook, for instance, and people will, criticize, and I don't believe that, and that's wrong, and they'll say all those things. I leave all those posts there. I let them, speak their mind. It's important to do that. And I see a lot of other people not doing that. As soon as they get any kind of disagreement, unfriend, or unfollow. That's a strange strategy. I don't really play by those rules. I prefer to have more friends and have a vibrance of opinions, because what will end up happening after a while, if you do that, you'll end up in an echo chamber, and all your friends are going to be saying and believing the same thing, and then you're really deep into your tribe, and then you don't really know what's going on over there, right? So imagine, for instance, there was no internet and there was no television. And, Europe was very different. It was very different in London, right? That city was way over there, and it's very different. We had no idea about it. And you take a plane, and you'd go over there. It would be culture shock, right? What are these people? They speak English, kind of, but it's weird. I've never heard it before, right? And that's what ends up happening if we stay too deeply in our tribe. So what I encourage people to do is not to do that, is try to have some other points of view. Doesn't mean you have to change yours, but just have some other points of view so you understand where the other people are thinking and where they're going, what they're believing. Helps a lot.
Yeah, I'm reminded, I'm a big fan of the Four Agreements. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this have read the Four Agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz, I had the chance to be with him for an afternoon. A very sweet man. And the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. And I feel like that is the right first agreement, because when you come right down to it, words have power. And, Mark Twain said the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So picking the right word, choosing your words carefully. And when we're in that frenzied state, we have a tendency to lash out, and we're not careful with our words. And sometimes you wish you could take it back, and we all face that. But I think it's very important at this stage of the game, with everything that's going on, is to be careful with your words. You may not intend the words to sting. It may be just an opinion. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And as I learned raising a child, it's very often what you look like when you're saying it. If you look happy, you can say something. If you look stern, mad. So the word is very important. And I think it's important to pick words that you want to embody. That's why, for me, words like compassion, simplicity, right? The first 5 words in my book, The New Game is Selling, are simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Leonardo da Vinci. So if you can make things simple, if you can simplify things so people can understand it, it's easier to communicate rather than getting to a long-winded, complex, complicated. So I always look to make things simple. And the other agreement, which was actually the fifth agreement, his son wrote the book, is listen, but be skeptical, right? And so I like to listen. I like to listen to what people say, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. But I am skeptical. And it's not just because I lived 40 years in New Jersey. And we're all skeptical out there. But in today's world, one of my clients said to me, you know, Mitch, people talk about building trust as being critical, of course. He said, but you know, the reality today is you have to remove distrust. There's so much distrust in our institutions, distrust in our experts. You know, it used to be you look to the expert and you say, you got to trust him. And you say, could the expert be wrong? How could he be wrong? He's an authority. Well, I learned in the process of this journey of mine that autonomy is a higher value than authority. And to me, autonomy is freedom, is the highest value. So I question authority. Now, it may be because my father was NYPD. I always questioned authority. He said, do something. I said, why? Right? And he got really mad, but he understood. And to me, it's like, don't tell me what to do, all right? Help me understand what's in my best interest to do. So just by way of your title or your position doesn't give you authority over my autonomy. And that's part of what I see happening today is many people, especially our generation, were brought up to respect authority, value authority, believe in the authority. I happen to be 180 degrees the opposite. I always questioned authority. And that worked very well for me because sometimes people with authority, they may have authority in name or title, but they don't have moral authority. And so if you elevate your autonomy and say, I'm not going to let any authority violate my autonomy. I own my mind, I own my body, and I am my soul. And nobody's going to take that from me. And that is, I get almost defiant about that. Because if I give up my mind to somebody or something or a belief, if I give up my body to somebody telling me what I have to take or don't, then isn't that the fastest way to break my spirit?
It is.
And so I'm not going to allow anybody to break my spirit. I've been through a stroke, 2 brain surgeries, nursing home, 200 rehab sessions. I'm not going to let some authority break my spirit. So how do I prevent that? I control my mind and I own my body. And I think that has been something that's worked for me so far. We'll see how it works out in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've always known that our leaders have clay feet. I think that was the saying, right? Our leaders have clay feet made of clay. I think is the way that it was stated, and I think we're seeing that now in a way that I never expected to see it. You get close to, it was always for me musicians, right, in the 80s and MTV and such, and the song is so great and so wonderful, and then you look at the musicians, you go, I wouldn't hang out with that person, right? It was always my experience. I really stopped watching music videos because I started to hate music. It really just caused that for me. And you would see it sometimes in our industry, the speaking community. You would see some speakers that, come up on stage and they do their presentation. You think, wow, they're the most amazing thing ever. They're so kind and everything. And they're backstage yelling and cursing out their staff. And it's like, okay, they're not who we thought they were. But the leaders that we have today, so many of them, we don't see that. We don't get to see the behind the scenes. Media only covers what's on the facade, and you get what you get. But now their actions are really starting to, lift that curtain up, if you will. And a lot of people are seeing more and more, like you said, it's like they're in authority, but they have no moral authority. And they're just making decisions and doing stuff for who knows who's behind them, who knows who's pulling the strings. But it's not in our best interest.
Well, and that's for each individual to determine or what's in their best interest. But when you look at the collective, one of the big distinctions, and I've been a student of something called axiology for 30 years. I've been a student and a teacher. Axiology is the science and study of human value. And the premise is that there's 3 dimensions of value. I use the words soul, role, and goal. love, serve, and obey. And the authority demands obedience. Whether or not it's moral or immoral, the highest value of the authority is obedience, control. Well, that's the antithesis to humanity, because humanity is self-control. It's freedom, autonomy over the one thing I own, which is this thing here. The authority wants to control it. So when you look at somebody who's an expert or an authority, I personally filter it through the lens of what's the motive, what's their purpose. Is their purpose to love and serve their constituency, or is their purpose to control, to have authority over, to have dominion over? And I don't think I've ever seen such blatant across the board in so many industries where the authorities have been wrong, the experts have been wrong, the facts and data don't line up with the prognostications. So if you can't continue to count on the authority for your information, for truth, for what's real, but that authority is filtering the information through a prism of control and domination and direction, you're getting misinformed. And so how do you find the truth? How do you know what's real, what's not? More difficult than ever. And that's why I say, you've got to dive below the surface. Or
and that's always comes up, and you say, okay, so we're going to dive below the surface, and then the question then becomes, well, Rob, I don't have time for that. I've got to run a business. I got to take care of my family. I got this. I got that. We're on that perpetual treadmill, right? And you and I, we spend more time probably than we really have to do that, to dig below the surface. But I think that's why people hire us in some respects, is they're looking for those answers that they don't have time to dig for themselves. And I think we've been very good at coming forward and saying, here, this is what we believe, here's where we stand. And a lot of people don't do that. And then you walk on eggshells around them because you don't know, what you can bring up, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about.
Yeah.
It's easier when you know where somebody is on what side of all the arguments. There's so many arguments today, so many issues. It's easier when you know which side they're on.
Well, I once had an experience when I moved out to San Diego, was going to networking events, and I'm not big on that, but I forced myself, right? So I go to one event, and I knew somebody there, so I went. And I met this guy, how you doing? And he said, I'm having this challenge. And he said what the challenge was. And I said, might I offer a suggestion? Maybe you could do this. I did it innocently, and I did it in the spirit of good neighbor. He ripped me a new one. He said, you don't know nothing about me. Where do you come off giving me advice? It was like, whoa, this is supposed to be San Diego. Everybody's supposed to be chilling, cool. But he was right. I didn't ask. I asked him, but I didn't realize. I didn't say, can I offer you something? I kind of just went into it, and I realized, nobody has a right to give you advice if you don't ask for it. Now, it was a harsh lesson I learned because I'm always, sometimes too quick. And I realized that unless somebody wants it, is it really your responsibility to give them advice or suggestions? So now I ask people, how deep do you want to go? I'm the dive master, right? You're swimming on the surface. I'll come up to the surface with you and I'll swim with you. And I'll find how much I can say. But if you want to dive and you don't feel you have the time or the inclination, or you're too frightened, or you need somebody to hold, I'll dive with you. And we'll go at your speed. So if you want to go one level down, 10 feet, we'll look at what's around you at 10 feet. If you want to go into deep waters, I'll go with you. But just prepared. And this isn't anything. This is in business, in life, in conversation, and with your family. I think a lot of issues between people is a breakdown of communication. So you're not getting agreement. Like, do we agree that you want to go down 10 feet? Okay, good. Let's go down 10 feet. No. I want to stay on the surface. All right. So I learned a harsh lesson, but it was a good lesson, that it's best to ask people, how deep you want to go here? You know, what do you really want to know? Yep. And like, are you prepared to find out things that may blow your worldview? And a lot of people, I can appreciate it, they're not comfortable with going into that conversation.
They're really not. And, you know, Tony Robbins had always said, and I really like the way he phrased it. He says, you know, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one. But the light bulb's got to want to change, right? And I've used that throughout my entire coaching career, and I've been coaching now since '95. And I always, you know, ask the question. It's like, are you willing to look at this? Are you willing to go here? Do you want help with this? Yes or no? And sometimes people are like, you know, no, I'm not ready. I can't. I don't want to deal with it right now. And perfectly fine with that. I'll just sit back and listen. And that's one of the skills you have to have in life, is be a good listener and not always be the one talking. So when I, you know, do a lot of the coaching work that I do, it's like they're talking more than I am. I'm asking questions, I'm learning from them, and then I let them do the talking. And I usually figure out pretty quickly where they need the help to move forward. And, you know, we need to do that more as a society, because we're not. We're all yelling and screaming. This is my opinion, blah, 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 blah. And the other side's not receiving it anymore. We're not listening to each other anymore. You know, we've tuned it all out. Stop. You know, it's like, this is what we're doing. And then I think what it causes us to dig in deeper. You know?
Yeah, you get your heels dug in.
Dug in deeper.
I was on a call. I was being interviewed by one of my clients last week. We were talking about business, but we got into a deeper conversation. And we got to the topic of selling, right? And I said, do you realize that people aren't buying what you're selling, right? Because you're not selling what they're buying. You're selling your product. You're selling your whiz-bang thing, all the benefits, advantages. But there's one emotional link that causes everybody to buy everything they buy, except for, like, you know, convenience items. And your job is to find out what that emotional link is. And you can't know. You think you're selling something, but they're buying something else. And until you ask all your clients, and this is gold here for you in business, the one question, $1 million question, why did you buy from us? Why did you do business with us? When you ask that question, you find out things that you would never know if you don't ask the question. I asked that question to a client in 1993. I was consulting, training big companies. I was 5 years into the game. I said, you have consultants coming in here all day long. Why did you hire me? He said, Mitch, you are the first guy that came in here and said, hey, break down the walls between marketing, sales, and service. Start talking to each other and realize that it's one holistic process and you should be working together. And then he said, and because of that, we're better able to attract, convert, and keep customers. I said, I could kiss you. Can I use that? He said, absolutely. See, because I think in terms of my products and seller speak. And when he said that to me, it was like the golden goose. So when people say, Mitch, what do you do? I say, my clients tell me. I'm really good at helping them attract, convert, and keep more customers. Which of those would you like to do better? And I got that from a client. I may have come up with it, but the words rang so true. And until you know what they're buying, you don't know what you're selling. And the only way to know what they're buying is to ask them, what did they buy and why did they buy it? And then you have what I call the USA, your unique service advantage, which is far more powerful than a USP, which is unique selling proposition, that you go into a room, you create it, you language it, and you throw it out into the world, and you hope it hits, and then you look around, crickets, right? Why?
Are they running to the back of the room? Are they buying?
Yeah.
Are they going there? Yeah.
And so what I found was, if you really want to know what you do, you have to ask the people that are buying what it is you offer and get that language from them. So it changes your whole marketing, it changes your language, and it even changes your value proposition.
So going forward, as we're looking into the new sphere that is 2022. We're close. We're a day away from that happening. If you're looking at everything that's happened over the last 2 years, all the challenges and the changes and the new direction, the clients changing their buying behaviors and all the rest of that. If you were to pick one thing to focus on for a business owner, what should they be focused on going forward?
Well, if you're an existing business owner,
Yeah.
I hands down your clients, your customers.
Be thankful, first of all, you're still in business,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I'm not a marketer, really. I never liked marketing. It wasn't my gig, but I love service. And one of the secrets of our success, and I've been able to help companies, entrepreneurs, I've trained 1 million people, literally live, face-to-face, or on virtually like this. If you see service as a product and you put your focus on serving people, delivering, loving, and serving people, you would be surprised at how your existing customers, past customers, can resurrect a business even when it's dying. And most of us, depending upon our business, unless we're retail where we have repeat customers coming in, we're looking for the next new one, right? So as you got a customer, on to the next new one. But every customer has very deep potential. They call it in business the lifetime value of a customer. So my business was always, I want to serve first. And if I can serve first, I will find people who want service. I can then sell whatever I sell and turn service from what is in most companies an expense department into a profit center. And that's how I came up with the ultimate profit model. I realized that every business, no matter what, whether you're sitting on your kitchen table or you're IBM, you market, you serve, you sell, you serve. All right? Marketing, expense, sometimes very expensive. Sales is revenue, income. For many companies, most I've worked with, service is an expense. So you have two expense departments bookending one income center. That's why salespeople get paid a lot of money. And that's why sales has to do triple duty. It has to pay for the marketing that generated the sale. It has to pay something to the company in profit or the salesperson. Then there has to be money left over to serve or service the customer. What would happen, I ask this for all companies I work with, what would happen if you could turn one of those expense departments into a profit center? Meaning you could make your service a profit source. That means now you'd have two profits and income centers and one expense. Transform your business. Take it a step further. What if you get 40, 50, 60, 70% of your new business, new income from your existing customers? What would happen to your marketing? You'd have to spend less. The compound effect of two income centers, one expense, and then reducing the expense of marketing and turning it into income and service can absolutely transform any business, assuming you have customers. All right? So that's where I would focus. I would focus on what can we do for our customers, our past customers, engage them in a conversation, ask them why they bought from you, what more do you need, how can we serve you better in the future? And that's where I would put my attention.
So what I'm getting from you is that right now, if you're looking at a lot of the deal that we have to do as far as business owners, is we need to take care of our customers better because we're losing them. And they're, what I'm finding is I'm talking to my clients as well. What I'm finding is it's harder and harder for them to pull that credit card out because their expenses are higher, right? So when gas prices are shooting up like this and food prices are shooting up and rent is shooting up and everything's getting more expensive for them, it's harder to make that sale. So I like the idea. I like the approach of saying, hey, let's up the service rather than let's up the hype, right? A lot of companies will go, okay, we need to market more. We need to sell more. We need to make sure we don't lose anybody. Let's just push a little bit harder. But I like the idea of instead saying, hey, let's give them more service. Let's give them more certainty that they're doing business with us, and it's going to produce a better result, or they're going to have a better experience when they work with us and not with others.
Well, when you think about it, and everybody can relate to this, right? This time of year, you get bombarded with offers from everybody, and the majority of them are discount offers.
Heavy discounts,
Right?
yeah.
So your incentive is like, if we give you it at lesser price, will you buy it? Where I say, all those messages, what if you did a sequence of messages? Hey, why did you buy from us to begin with? What brought you here? If they're gone, you say, what took you out of the game? And then you say the magic words, what will bring you back? And if they say nothing, all right, well, you're lost.
Yeah.
But if one or two clients say, if you do this, I would come back. You find out instead of just barraging them with more messages, because messaging is cheap and easy, we just figure if we do more of it, it's like throw more spaghetti against the wall.
Make a bigger mess. Go
Right,
ahead.
exactly. Whereas if you actually reached out and connected with people, and interesting statistic I shared with another mastermind I'm in. I do a lot of B2B selling, business to business, and there was an article written about why business buyers don't want your content. You know how everybody's pushing content, and I'm big on content and intellectual property, right? So the article said, stop sending content to your B2B buyers. They don't want any more. They want this instead. What do you think the this was that the B2B buyers wanted?
Solutions.
That was one of them. 65%. The survey said empathy. What?
That's out of left field, huh?
Empathy.
Yeah.
I read that and I said, wait a minute, I need sources. I want to know what. Sure enough, they're sick of content. They're sick of being pushed. They want somebody to say, hey, I understand your situation. Tell me about what your challenges are. When I go in to do corporate work, one of the secrets of being effective at corporate work is not just finding out the corporate mission. And that's usually easy. The website, whoever
We'll
you
tell
talk
you,
to,
yeah,
right?
you'll usually find that there.
What I found was much more valuable was to find out the personal agenda of the person I'm talking to.
Interesting.
So I get into when I started corporate training, I got into my largest client by inviting a clerical worker attended my public seminar. At the end of it, she thanked me, and she says, oh, by the way, I work for this insurance company. It was the 12th largest insurance company. I said, well, who do you work for? The vice president of sales. I said, wow. Taught me another thing, and this is how I've always been. You treat everybody like $1 million person. I know some people have said, treat everybody like $1 million customer. I don't think of them as a customer. I think of them as a person. They have an agenda, they have a life, they have interests. So I took an interest in her, not knowing who she was, because she was in the class. And she came up after me and said, would you be interested in meeting my boss? Yeah, right? So
Go ahead, twist my arm.
it's amazing what happens when you treat people like people instead of prospects, widgets, a database, a list. And again, it's back to humanity, all right? So we're looking for a return to humanity, to realize everybody's got problems, challenges, and as much
Well,
as...
the recognition that right now everything is upside down, right? So we have so much going on, and the truth is we do want someone to understand us, understand our situation. We do want someone that cares about the challenges that we're facing, because they're unique to you, but at the same time they're not. You have these unique challenges, but then if you look at a lot of businesses across the board, everyone's kind of having the same issues right now, and you need someone to understand it. And it stands out. I don't know how you feel about it, Mitch, but it stands out when you get marketing messages and the marketing message is coming across as if we're still in 2019, right? It feels out of place now, right? It stands out like a sore thumb a lot of times because we're not there.
And again, when you're in uncharted territory,
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know how to respond.
Right.
And so very important to ask people. One of the things that business owners, experts, authorities, teachers, instead of taking the position of a beginner's mind and always seeking, asking questions and seeking, they kind of have a position that I'm supposed to have all the answers, right? So rather than communicate to people and be really curious and interested, they try to be interesting. So they try to, tell you all the things they know and they're good at and give you advice. And
Well,
then
that's the
again,
mistake that a lot of them make. They'll talk. And if you're talking more than your prospect, you're not listening.
and it's the same thing in personal
Yeah.
relationships. And I'm pretty much an introvert by nature, but I can have a conversation.
I was thinking about the time we met. First time we met.
I don't even remember that.
We were having dinner with Ken MacArthur at one of the hotels here in San Diego. It was after one of his events. I think you're having the gefilte fish, and I was having the macaroni. And it was. You were. You immediately caught my attention because you're someone who listened. You didn't come out and say, "Here, I'm great, I'm wonderful." I had no idea who you were. I didn't know all these wonderful things you'd done, but you were a person who listened, and I'm also a person who listens, and we got along really great. And I was like, "Hey, Mitch, we ought to do something." And it started from there. It was about 10 years ago now, I'm sure.
Maybe longer.
Yeah.
But I think that part of it is being humble enough to recognize that it's not whether you have the answers, it's whether you can find the right questions to ask.
Right.
That will lead you to the solutions that you need. And sometimes, let's face it, one of the things I talk about in consulting is everybody wants to get paid for what they do, obviously, right? But we who have knowledge, and we all have knowledge, but not many of us get paid for what we know, right? And there's a big industry, obviously now, it's a $1 trillion industry. Fewer people get paid for what they see. One of the distinctions that I share with people is being a rainmaker, all right? I don't like labels per se, coach, consultant, because they narrowly define you. And people have a lockbox in their head. They say, I have a coach. I don't need another coach. But the reality is, if you don't look at it through the lens of a label, all right, it changes everything. And so I look at it as sometimes you can see something that nobody else sees. And that one thing you see could be worth a lot to somebody who can't see it. Back when 30 years ago, next year will be 30 years, I was the keynote speaker for Brian Tracy International. And it was the year I came out with my first program called 21 Ways to Double Your Sales. He inspired it. So at the convention, I was a keynote. I presented him with the first copy. And behind me on the flip chart, there were words, the mantra, big doors swing on little hinges. That's been my mantra for 35 years. And that was how I started the presentation. And I said that if you look at the little hinges, so you can't open the big doors. I'm too small to push open the big doors. You find the little hinge that will open the big door. That's true for business. It's true for relationships. It's true for anything in life, that if you want to open a big door of opportunity, look for the little hinge. One of the little hinges is what you see. Yet very few people get paid for what they see. They give away what they see. And I say, if you can get paid for what you know and what you see, how do you get paid for what you see? It's based on the value of what you see is worth to the person you see it for. And so as you start to expand your possibilities, you start to realize, well, I could get paid for what I do, my hands. I get paid for what I know, my head. But I might also get paid for what I see, and let somebody else put the price on that. What's it worth to you if I see something that could change your life or change your business? What would it be worth to you? And let them price it.
Obviously, yeah. And, we talk a lot about, you and I, when we have our conversation, we're always talking about, what we see coming down the pipe and the things that are happening. And there are companies that need that now more than ever. because they don't see it. They don't have time to see
Right.
it. They don't have time to look at it. And, when I look at, okay, so what do people really pay me for? My marketing strategies? Yeah, for sure. They like that. But oftentimes what I find is when I'm working with clients, they don't need another marketing strategy. They really don't need another marketing strategy. They already have what they need. What they need is some redirection. They need a new attitude. They need, a new way of seeing things. They need to stop marketing the way they were marketing in 1999 and come up to speed with the way the economy has changed. It's usually stuff like that. And, when you can look at a business or look at any organization and see where the soft spots are, the weak spots are, it's easy, I think, for us anyway, to look at a company and say, look, you could make another $100,000 here, another $500,000 here. Here's $2 million that you're missing, right? What's that worth? That's worth everything.
And you don't know how to price that, because you're not
You
getting
don't.
paid for time.
Yeah.
You can see something in 5 minutes. How do you charge for that?
Yeah.
You can't charge by the hour. You can't charge by the project because there's no project.
It's not a project, yeah, exactly.
It's just, I see it, So there are 3 things that are really critical to know yourself. And I believe that the most important knowing is to know yourself. Know I call it the ABCs: attention, bias, clarity. Attention is where you look, right? Now I'm looking into the camera. Now I'm looking at you. Attention is where you look. Bias is how you look. Clarity is how much of what you look at do you see. So if your attention is constantly on what you're missing, what you don't have, what you're not good enough yet, right? Your bias is going to turn your attention to, I'm not ready. I don't have enough. And then you start to look at the world in the same way all the time. If I come along and say, hey, Robert, look over there instead of over there. Now I can help you shift your attention. You might see what you didn't see because your attention was so fixed. That's part of helping people see. So like I always use the example of, the goal setters in the world say, keep your eyes on the goal, fixated, don't look to the right or left, and just go forward, right? But what if you have a Lear jet right over here waiting to take you to your goal, and you can't see it because you won't look around you, no peripheral vision, and you're fixated on your goal, and you're struggling to drive and trudge, and there's a limo waiting to take you, and you don't see it, all right? That's bias. And bias, everybody has bias. The key to bias is not having it. It's knowing what your bias is. I have a bias for looking at what's missing in organizations. You won't hire me for me to tell you what's there. You know what's there. If you want me to tell you what's missing, that's my bias. I'm good at that. I know that. If you know your bias, and then you understand whether you have clarity or not, and you're humble enough to say, I don't see what I don't see, then all of a sudden you can reach out, you can get coaching, you can get help to shift your attention, to look at a different angle, which is bias, and maybe to clear away the smog and say, wow, now I can see what I didn't see before. And that requires a very important success ability called coachability. The art of willingness to learn. And so if you're coachable, there's everything in the world for you. If you're not coachable and you insist on doing it by yourself, even when you're just, in a paper bag and you can't get your way out, you're never going to have the clarity, put the attention and the bias where it could help you. So that was valuable input for me and valuable context for my clients as well.
Okay, we're coming down to the last segment here. We're roughly, I'm looking at the clock here, maybe 20 minutes left on our stream for today. And really happy that everyone's still with us and still hopefully getting value. I know Mitch has really been pushing it out there today. Really appreciate that. Let's look at the last piece that I really wanted to talk about is solutions. right? We know we've been a little bit here, a little bit there talking about it, but I really want to look at, real solutions for people, because I know that the businesses are, our business owners that I talk to. I talk to a lot of professionals and chiropractors and, people who are information marketers and that kind of thing, coaches. I look at them and they're thinking that because the calendar is flipping to a new year, everything's going to change. I don't see that on the horizon. I see a lot more turmoil. I see a lot more chaos. I see a lot more uncertainty. We're still in the rowboat. We're still in the middle of the ocean trying to survive this. So let's talk about some things that might help people navigate, what's coming. Because you and we're more aware, I think, than most than what is coming down the pipeline here.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this. First, we're at that time of year where pretty much everybody is thinking about goal setting.
Right.
All right. And a long time ago, I came up with a model that I had to come up with for myself. And I realized that a lot of people have goal frustration. They're not where they think they ought to be. And that leads to role frustration. Why do I do what I'm doing if I'm not where I want to be? And that can lead to soul frustration, like, what's it all mean? Why am I here? And so the answer came to me one day when I realized the problem is that we've got it reversed. We do our goal setting, and our role becomes to get the goal. And then if we have time left over, we nurture our soul, or we pay attention to our soul. So I realized one day that, well, what if we reverse that process? What if we do our soul setting, then our role setting, and then our goal setting? One of the reasons that there's frustration in the world, and just frustration everywhere, is because there's a misalignment, just like our body. I had my first chiropractic session since my stroke a couple of weeks ago, and he cracked my back. I swear to God, my whole body just went limp. It was like crack, 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 because I had all these subluxations. Well, I look at soul setting and role setting and goal setting. When you have frustration, you have subluxations. It's either your goal is not aligned with your role is not aligned with your soul, or all three are not aligned together, and you're kind of battling yourself. So I say to people, consider doing your soul setting. Now, that's a hard thing. It's like you got to go inside and see what's important to you, what matters to you. Where do you want to spend your time? A lot of people talk, and I do too, talk about ROI, which is?
Return of investment.
Right.
Yeah.
Return on investment. But they don't often talk about ROE, return on energy. You have so much energy. Where you direct your energy has a big effect on ROL, return on life. And if you're always focused on return on investment and you're not thinking about return on energy or return on life, you can be very frustrated if you're not getting very much return on investment, goal, which is affecting your return on energy, role, and then it's adversely affecting your return on life, soul. So I say, do your soul setting, your role setting, and then do your goal setting in the context of role and soul, and you might find that it totally changes the mix of how you spend your time and where you spend your time. All right, that was just gold. That came to me just, magical download from somewhere years ago. The other thing I like to say is about 5 or 6 years ago, we sat on this stage, as we do every year, and I did a presentation on, are you a jockey or a horse? Very powerful distinction. A lot of people are frustrated. They're in business, they're not doing well, or they're not making it, they're not feeling like they're as successful as they'd like to be. You have to find out if you're a jockey, which means you ride a horse into the money. You're a broker, you're an employee, you're an agent, you work for a company, the company is the horse, all right? Or are you a horse? Meaning, are you the company? And there are 4 types of horsemen. There's the entrepreneur, but not the typical entrepreneur. The entrepreneur starts businesses and flips them. I was an entrepreneur for 10 years. I was involved in like 10 businesses, right? But the entrepreneur needs the second horseman, a business owner, to run the business. If you don't have somebody running the business, the entrepreneur will run the business into the ground. Then you've got the third horseman, the practitioner. I'm a practitioner. I love the art of the work. Musicians, holistic healers, accountants, massage therapists, lawyers, all practitioners. And many of them don't want to have big businesses. They just want to be practitioners, right? And then the fourth horseman is a free agent. That's the person who will do any kind of job or project, work for a month, take off a month, because they want ultimate freedom. Now, you have to decide which of those four jumps out at you as, hey, I align more with the business owner. I want to run the business, one business. I don't want to have 10 businesses. Or I'm a practitioner. I want to do the work. How can I run my practice? And once you decide which of those types you are, then it becomes much easier for you to organize the enterprise around your strengths rather than you being a practitioner trying to be an entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur trying to be a business owner, or a business owner trying to be a free agent.
So the real message is you can't do it by yourself.
Yes.
And that's I see a lot of people do that, and I do that way too much. I need to bring in more people as well.
And you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
Really, and again, back to the soul role goal. If you come from
back to the meaning of entrepreneur,
right,
which is the French word is entreprendre, which is literally means to undertake. So you're actually an undertaker. And as an entrepreneur, we love everything. I love every aspect of the business. I can't decide whether I should be behind the camera or in front of the camera. You know what I mean? I want to be both. And how do I do both? Yeah, that's got to get out of that habit.
Yeah, and it's again accepting, yourself for your strengths. And again, I think if people realize what they're best suited to do and who they're best suited to serve, it's easier to formulate a plan than when you're trying to be something that you're not, trying to learn something that you really have no aptitude, trying to do it all yourself. I'm a do-it-all-yourselfer. My dad used to be like, if you want to get something done, you do it yourself.
Right? That's what you're taught. Yeah.
But it's
exactly
an interdependent world, and you need support. So those are some things, a few more practical suggestions here along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and that's one of the reason that we're giving away the gifts that we're giving away too, is really to find where those weak spots are with you, and firstly for me in doing the session with you, is really to find out where you're challenged, where you're struggling, and then offer you solutions in order to move forward and take it to the next step. Because things are uncertain out there. You look at the logo we have back here. Thriving in uncertain times is really the kind of the theme of what we're talking about here. I've been telling my clients since the beginning that they need to keep focus on the business, with a difference now is they need to also be looking over their shoulder. You got to know what's coming, and you got to know what's coming over the horizon in front of you, right? These things are coming at us, and for many years, politics for me was just I would follow politics for the marketing. Literally for the marketing. How did they market themselves? How did this president get elected? What was the campaign about? And I would look at all that, and I'd get real excited about the marketing and what they said and how they said it, how they positioned themselves, and all of that. Knowing full well that if you and I were to do marketing like that, with the handcuffs on us, throw away the key. You know what I mean? Because you couldn't get away with that kind of thing. They could do things that we can't do. These days, I think it's real important to pay attention to it. Because when those decisions are made, those mandates come down, they impact us literally within 24 hours, right? It's not over there in Washington anymore. It's there, and then it's here. Boom, like instantaneously. And you need to know what to do. And one of the biggest skills that you can have as an entrepreneur is flexibility, right? You can't be rigid in times like this. You've got to be able to move with it's a dance, and we're dancing really fast right now. It's like 120 beats per minute. We're really going, and you've got to be able to be flexible in that. And I know people who are rigid and they get pummeled. The currents just come in, it just pummels them into the rocks, rather than being flexible like the kayak guy, and you're doing whatever you need to do, and you're jumping over the rocks, and you're flying. You're actually enjoying the process. I have some business owners that are enjoying this process because they're getting more of their blood going, and they're getting more creative in how they're finding solutions. That's a very rare person that can do that. So if you can't do that, then you need to look for people like us who can, who can figure out for you how to be more creative, how to get out of, what happens after 10, 15 years doing the same thing. You can't even think outside your box because you put yourself in that box and you're doing the same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. Mitch, what else can I do? I'm doing everything I know how to do. Right. That's why you hire Mitch, right? That's why you bring me on, because we can show you things that you haven't considered. And one of the great things, really a gift that I think I have, and you as well, is we get to see multiple industries. So we can find things that are working in a different industry and help you integrate it into whatever industry you're in. And I think that's really key today, because not one industry has all the answers, right? You can't do what this industry is doing in your industry, or you can't keep doing what you've been doing all these years. You need to find new inspiration, new motivation outside of it. And I think it's a time that is challenging, but is also really good for the creative side of you. I'm very creative. I come up with very interesting strategies. You come up with very interesting strategies. And that creativity is really what's being brought out in us. And the reason I really wanted to do this is because I have found a new passion through it all. I found a new voice, something I didn't know was there, right? That as things get tougher and tougher, I actually get stronger, right? Who would have figured? So instead of being pummeled by it, it's strengthening me, because more and more people now are coming and saying, I need help, I need help, I need help. And I'm saying, I have no choice now. I have to be strong for them, because these are the people that I'm serving. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, yeah, business is going to be really good if you're willing to stay strong, if you're willing to be flexible at the same time. It's really interesting to be strong and be flexible, right? You can't be strong and inflexible. A lot of people think I'm just going to be strong and stand here like a mountain, boom. But you've got to be able to, dodge the bullets when they come. And if you can do that, I think 2022 could be a much better year going forward. Now, I don't know about you, Mitch, but I'm ready to take 2021, stick it in a bag, tie it up, throw it in the river and forget about it. Let it go downstream and move beyond everything that we've been through. Take the lessons. We want the lessons for sure. Take the creativity from that, and then take it to, whatever 2022 is going to throw our way.
You mentioned box thinking, right? One of my mantras is new thinking. When I wrote The New Game of Business about 25 years ago, I came up with the brand The New Game. And I realized there's a new game of business, right? And I said, what are the elements? Well, there's 3 keys: new thinking, new doing, and new being. Well, the being part is everybody's individual job. But the thinking part is something that people get into habitual thinking. So my mantra is not outside the box. My mantra is no box thinking. Throw the box away. Probably 30 years ago, I started this practice of waking up every day, not with a to-do list, with a blank sheet of paper. I'd get out my yellow pad and I'd say, okay, if I were going to create my day from scratch, tabula rasa, blank slate, how would I create my day? Now, I had things to do, but my life wasn't being driven by my to-do list. In fact, I recommended to my partner one time, you should create a got done list. And that's the first thing you should look at every day is your got done list, because your to-do list keeps growing and growing, and then you forget about all the things you got done. So new thinking is no box thinking. It's not outside the box. If you're outside the box, you're just in a bigger box. You're still tethered to the box. I say throw the box away and clean the slate. And sometimes that's scary because there's nothing on the paper. That's okay. You might go a couple of days with nothing on the paper. But it's almost like you have to clear your mind. It's like the old analogy of the rice bowl. You fill up your head with so much stuff, sooner or later, you've got to empty it out, create space for new. And so I think that if you can concentrate on new thinking, new doing, and new ways of being yourself, vulnerability, authenticity. I wrote an article, The Power of Inauthentic Authenticity. Everybody wants to be authentic. When somebody's being real and authentic. You don't have to pretend.
It's coming out more now than ever, too. We're seeing a lot more of that.
And I think that's the key to business is...
Well, it is more now more important now. I know we've been talking about it for years. Be authentic, be authentic, be authentic. And, you're not authentic when you're hiding your beliefs and you're hiding, because you don't want to offend anyone or you're afraid of what somebody may think. I really have a problem with that because the people around you, you can't have conversation. You can't have deep conversation. And what I find is because people know where I stand on the issues, I'm not afraid to talk about them. My relationships are closer, immediately closer, not weeks, months to build it. It's like, bam, oh, you're part of this, and I know where you believe, I know where you stand, and their relationships are very different. And there are people who are like, I don't, I hate the way you believe, I hate the things you believe, and they go away. Well, at some point, they're never going to be a client anyway. They're never going to be a friend. They're never going to be close in my inner circle. I'm okay with that because now I've got this whole new group of people that have come on board, and the relationships are so much more fulfilling.
It's funny about authenticity. When I wrote the article, I said, well, if all of a sudden everybody's being authentic, if now you're being authentic, what were you being before you were being authentic? Like, authenticity is not a marketing strategy. It's just being yourself, and your beliefs are part of yourself.
I'll tell you what I was doing, and then I think a lot of people do this as well. I was choosing what I was sharing with people very judiciously, not to get them to dislike me. So what I was sharing, I was honest about, but it wasn't authentic because you never got to see the whole picture. You got this little piece here, this little piece here, this little piece here. Those were all true, and I was thinking it's authentic, but it's not. It's honest.
Yeah.
Honesty and authenticity sound the same, but they're actually very different.
And you bring up a good point. One of the things that held me back way back when, and I had to wrestle with, and I observe it in other people because it's part of human nature. When you seek acceptance, validation, approval,
Yeah.
right? I'm the youngest of 8 kids. When I was younger, I was the ultimate people pleaser. I just didn't want to have anybody fighting. I want to be with everybody. But you realize that at some point, you can't strive for approval, acceptance, validation. You have to be strong enough to be you. And if somebody doesn't like you for you, that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
actually a good thing.
Yep.
Because as we get more social, intimacy is disappearing.
Yes.
And I think this whole movement toward vulnerability, authenticity, is really a movement toward intimacy. So when you can talk to somebody at a deep level and not be fearful of what you want to say or what they want to say, like at the surface, that swimming, the deeper you go below the surface, the more intimate you get. So now where everything is so widespread, you can communicate with 1 million people, the very same people are seeking to get to know the real you. They want to be intimate with you. And you see it in the people who have large social followings. They tend to be more intimate with the people that they
they share the things they wouldn't normally share, like the little video we did just before coming live here today. They share the kind of the behind the scenes, and it's interesting because when I built the studio, it was like you never come on camera without a shirt and tie and jacket on. That was during those years when all this online streaming was fairly new still, and now it's like none of it matters. You don't need this studio to do what we're doing.
Well, not only don't you need the studio, I've been really reluctant to do videos if I don't feel I have the right background or backdrop. And you look at the videos that people put out, and once you get past the environment, you're focused on what the person's saying. Yeah. And so a lot of the things that we held sacred cows are no longer sacred.
Yep.
And that's difficult for people of different generations to adapt to, like, what's going on here? So there's, again, adaptability. You're never too old to learn new tricks. But like I like to say, I want to teach the young guys some old tricks because there are still some old tricks that work just as well as the new tricks.
All right, let's talk about your free gift again. We have a few minutes here. Let's talk about what you're offering because I think that's important to share that.
Ultimately, I'm offering a second opinion, but to get to the second opinion, you're going to watch a 19-minute video where I explain the 6 leverage points in the business, how you can attract, qualify, convert, keep, multiply, and reactivate customers. You get to download my special report called The Ultimate Profit Model. and understand how you can deploy it in your business. And then if you fill out an intake form when you get there and do your homework, I'll check it out and I'll get back to you and offer you a second opinion as to whatever your major challenge or question might be. So normally we charge $1,000 for that, but in the spirit of the season and to help as many people as I can, for a limited time we'll be offering second opinions. So go to that page, click on the link that Robert provided for you, and you'll get redirected right there. Oh, there it is.
You can see it right there on the screen.
It's right on the screen. I got this little camera I'm looking at. You don't know how difficult it is to stay focused on not seeing yourself when you're behind the camera and be distracted to look where you're not supposed to look. So this is a very good lesson in paying attention to the right bias. So that's my gift.
So go to crushit22.com/gifts and you will get it for those podcast listeners who are listening and not watching the video. They can't see it on screen. For me, I'm offering a 44-minute strategy session. I've got 25 of them to offer. I could see some emails coming in already. Some people have already grabbed them. But I want you to grab this if this is of value to you, if you're a business owner of any kind, if you're a coach, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are an information marketer, chiropractor, professional massage therapist, whatever, who is really looking at 2022 and looking at the uncertainty, and maybe you've struggled the last 2 years. Maybe you're trying to figure out, new strategies, new things. That's what we'll talk about. We'll get on the phone or actually a Zoom call because I like to see who I'm talking to. So Zoom has changed the game quite a bit over the years. And we'll get on the Zoom call, and you'll tell me about your business, share with me where you're struggling, where your questions are, and I'll come back and give you some really solutions and give you some ideas, some strategies that I would use, some things that I would try to help you move forward and navigate. Because a little creativity goes a long way, and I think that we need to be thinking. Like Mitch says, forget about the box. Let's go think wider, bigger. Let's grab ideas from other industries. Let's grab tools, strategies, and things that are working now. I'm really lucky. I'm really blessed to be working with the kind of clients I work with and that cross so many different industries. And I get to see, what's working over here, what doesn't work there, what could work here, and get to mix and match. And it really lends a lot of value to the business owners that I end up doing business with. So www.crushit22.com/gifts. And you can sign up. Just put your email address in, follow through, and then you'll see one for me and one for Mitch. There's 2 buttons there. Just click on both if you'd like, or click on the one that you prefer. You're certainly welcome to take us up, both of us up on what we have to offer here. And I hope you'll get that done. Like I said, 25 of them. There's only a few left because people are already grabbing them. So really excited to have a chance to work with you. Mitch, we're right about at the 2-hour mark. We said we'd do about 2 hours today, and here we are. This has been tremendous fun.
As always with you, Robert. Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, huh? I want to say one thing. I could say a lot of things, but...
we could go another hour, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could. I want to talk about something I really feel is important for people to acknowledge in terms of value. We all know about tangible assets, right? Money, gold, silver. But we often overlook our intangible assets. So, years ago, I love acronyms. Sandy, my prior business partner, she used to get frustrated by acronyms, but they were good for remembering things. So I came up, how could I come up with an acronym for this? So I came up with the acronym PRESS, P-R-E-S-S. And I came up with that from, like, if you go to gamble and you play craps, dice, and you win on that round, the croupier says, do you want to take your earnings off the table, or would you like to press your bet? Press your bet means you leave it on the table and let the money ride. And I thought, that's a great acronym. P stands for psychic capital. R is relationship capital. E is emotional capital. S is social capital. And the second S is spiritual capital. Now, you can't put a dollar value, an amount on those per se. But when you think, let's take just one of them, which we all have in abundance, relationship capital. the relationship capital that each of us have built up over the years goes far beyond the people that we talk to on a daily basis. I was once doing a book signing in New York City years ago, and a woman who was managing it says, could you come over here for a minute? There's a woman who wants to talk to you. I said, sure. I walk up and she said, do you remember me? And I said, honestly, I don't. She says, 20 years ago, you came into our bank and you did a series of trainings. And you said something to me. You said, everybody is a virtual entrepreneur. Everybody is the president of their own personal services company. And that stuck with me. She said, I quit the bank. I started my own business. I live in Pennsylvania. I just drove 3 hours because I heard you were going to be here. And I wanted to tell you how you changed my life. I was speechless. I'm not usually speechless. You don't have any comprehension sometimes because you go about your daily routine. You don't know what kind of impact you have, what kind of difference you make to people that you come across, which is why I always try to be gracious as I can. You never know. And when she said, I drove 3 hours to be here just so I could say thank you and get a book signed, I spent literally a half hour after I was done talking to her. It was the most valuable thing that happened to me that day because she said something that was like, I couldn't pay enough money to get that. And it's in the intangibles of life, psychic, relationships, emotional, social, spiritual capital that we have. Everything that you want is in those 5 words. And if you don't have any money, any backing, any prospect of getting, go to your psychic, relationship, emotional, social, and spiritual capital, and you would be surprised at how many of those you could turn into actual real assets. And so I like people to really appreciate the value of their intangible assets as well.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's true. Our friend Ken MacArthur, we have a mutual friend, Ken MacArthur, always says you're making an impact whether you realize it or not. It's absolutely true. And, I run into that too in my business too. People I've coached 20, 30 years ago that I didn't remember. I've been coaching now professionally since 95. And it's you make an impact. You reach so many people, and doing a broadcast like this, reaching thousands. You wonder how many people are getting value from this, and how many lives have been changed based on what we've just shared here today in this short little interview.
Which is always what again reminds me. It doesn't hurt to be gracious to people. There's no reason to be rude. And someone once told me you can tell the size of a person based on how they treat people that can do nothing for them.
Yep.
And I've always believed that every human being deserves respect, appreciation, and so that's what I try to live out of.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you to you for coming here today. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and thank you to all of you who are watching and are listening on the replay on the podcast. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to reach out to us, go ahead, crushit22.com/gifts, and we'll be happy to give you some good value. And you can keep following us, robertimbriale.com or mitchaxelrod.com. It's our websites, and we're real excited to see what 2022 is going to bring. Happy New Year, my friend.
Same to you. And if you have any comments, please feel free to share with us what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want more of. And who knows, we may do this again.
Absolutely. We've got the studio. Why not use it, right?
Really.
All right. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching and sharing with your friends and followers. We do appreciate it. And we'll look forward to doing this again real soon. Thanks, everyone.